Welcome to Las Doctoras podcast, featuring your favorite profas bringing women and gender studies topics out of the university and onto the kitchen table.
I'm Christina, Chicana, Pinay, queer, Sha, ella, traveler, Earth, Mama Bruja.
I'm Renee, Mexicana, Tejana, Chicana, she, her, ella, Mama Bruja scholar and scribe.
Together, we are the academic and word brujas creating revolutionary spaces outside the walls of the ivory tower to cast spells, read the ancient texts, and tell our sacred stories. We make this magic as an offering to our ancestors, to those who will come after us, and for the change we wish to see in the world. Salud!
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. We're here together in person.
We're here
again.
Las Doctoras podcast. We're really loving us being in person and then all these amazing guests that have actually reached out to us. That feels really nice. It makes it easier for us to create more episodes. So
everyone's listening to our dreams. The ancestors are kind of, saying, hey,
making it all happen.
We're connecting you. Yeah, it feels like that. And this is particularly this interview. So, very much excited to have our guest.
Yes.
Just dive right in.
Yeah, go ahead. Introduce yourself, our wonderful guest. And
Doctora.
Can't wait to get into this conversation.
We're nervous, you can tell, but it's good. It's a good nervousness.
Welcome, doctora.
Hola, gracias. Thank you, las doctoras, for being open on this invitation to share this space with your audience to talk about us, I guess, very important issues in our community that revolves around like body image and body shaming and fat phobia. Who I am, I'm proud. I'm a proud Mexicana inmigrante of Huichol ancestry. I was born in the Sierra Madre in the state of Nayarit, Mexico, and raised in Watsonville, California. And so important to just really acknowledge the land, my ancestors from Huichol ancestry. I live in Monterey County currently, home to the Cosanoa and Esama Nation. And what else did you ask?
Any astrology that you know
Yes.
want to share?
And also, I feel like I would love everyone to hear your full name if you feel comfortable.
Claro. Hortencia Jimenez Sandoval.
Oh, beautiful.
Gracias. My name was butchered all my life, in the K through 12 system. So, yeah, thank you for asking me to say my full name.
So, where there's a little bit of tech issues here, but I think we're going to come through. The other thing that we love to ask is your astrology, and I want to guess actually. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Yes,
it's all social, but so you must have this. You have a rising sign that's an air sign, I think. But then you are getting shit done. I want to say you're a fire.
Yes.
Sun. So what are you? Tell me. Let's hear.
Leo. I'm Leo.
I thought that. I was like, she's a Leo. I think
Leo.
Oh my God, I love
you guys are good. Yes. Yeah, I don't know a lot about astrology. I have a really good friend who does a lot of the work. Based on what she told me, which I understand half of what she says to me because I just don't get it too much. She says I have a lot of Leo, a lot of fire in me, and with different signs. Because I'm very compassionate. I have a lot of passion. Very sensitive and I'm protective, I guess a lot of those beautiful characteristics of Leos.
I love
también soy
enojona. Do you hang out with them at all?
I don't know if I know too many.
We don't have many Leos in our life, actually.
Yeah,
in our circle, in our circulos. Like, I travel well with Leos, and I don't date. I don't date them very well.
I love that. I love that. Like self-awareness.
Yes, that's important. Self-awareness is key, right?
So I love it. Thank you for being here. I love that we get to interview fellow doctoras. So tell us what what is your work? Never
Yes.
I would love to know too, like
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of your academic journey
Yes.
because you're a fellow
Mhm.
doctora, and
Yes.
then maybe how that led to
Mhm.
this what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I grew up in the United States. I grew up far away from my family, from my paternal, my mother and
Mm,
my father and my siblings. So growing up away from my family and growing up undocumented, being raised in a very traditional Catholic household really shaped my childhood and my lens of how I
mhm,
saw the world. I didn't have the language, when you're a child, to understand immigration and understand family separation. You just don't
mhm,
know. You don't understand. And it wasn't until I got to the university. And it's like fast forward really quickly, right? So like first gen, going through all the struggles, pues ya se han de imaginar. But made it to the university, and I feel like I'm jumping a lot, but like I guess I'll just start from there.
mhm.
I took I took a couple of different courses, and I took sociology, and I fell in love with sociology because it gave me the language and it validated my experience. And
Yeah.
even though it was coming from white professors, it's interesting,
Mhm,
right? Because as a woman
mhm,
of color, right, it's crazy to say that for me, it has been white faculty who have been supportive in my journey in my graduate education. I had a white female feminist professor who taught gender studies, taught race, and like she really understood, and she was very supportive. She saw something in me that I didn't see, because growing up, you were not really encouraged to really embody your voice, to really take space. We're basically silenced because of patriarchy and so many things. And you get to the university and you're like, así como que you feel you feel like you don't belong, all these feelings that we go through as many first generation college students. And taking courses in sociology really helped me understand immigration, helped me understand like
mhm,
partly a little bit of explaining my life. And I decided to pursue my master's at the same institution, at San Jose State University. And it was
mhm,
this, white female professor who said, "You should apply for your master's." Y yo como, ¿qué es eso? Like, how do
mhm,
I do that? And it was easy for me to just apply in the same school. And I did a lot of nonprofit immigrant work because that's always been sort of my passion, working with the Latino immigrant community, a lot of work around civic engagement, know your rights, citizenship drives in Santa Clara County. And that really informed like my academic research on immigrant rights activism and leadership and immigration status as a form of identity, and how being undocumented shapes your identity. Because, I grew up like that, and then coming from a mixed status family. So I always wanted to insert my personal experience and that of my community in academia.
mhm,
And I went to grad school to UT Austin. And I do want to
mhm,
say that I applied to grad school in 2003, I think. And in 2004, I think I got rejected for all the schools. I applied to 10 universities, and I want to normalize like the rejection.
mm.
It's hard. It's hard grad school applying for PhD programs, when you're
Yes.
first gen. So it was
Yes.
hard. It was
Mhm.
hard going through the whole process, and hard
So
getting
hard.
rejected from all the schools, like todas. So
Mhm.
as an immigrant, and you're like, pues, esto no me va a detener. And I'm like, I'm going to start
Mhm.
teaching at the community college. So I started my career teaching at San Jose City College in San Jose in 2004. And I was 24. I was like, I was like, I felt like this badass chingona of like 24, like has a master's, starting to teach, aunque no sabe ni qué onda, how she's going to teach, But
Mhm.
I felt like fulfilled, but something was missing. And that was like, I did work in the nonprofit, but it's like reach
Mhm.
for the stars, honestly. And it might sound cliche, but
So
for me,
brave. Totally.
it was like, for me, it's like reach for the stars is like the ultimate, like the epitome sería el PhD, So,
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's like I'm paving the way. So I applied the second year, and I applied out of the state. Pues y me fui a UT Austin in Texas, and that's where I did my PhD. Went through a lot of stuff because I
Mhm.
decided to get married, decided to have children, be a student parent, and that was hard as a woman of color. And birthing
Mhm.
kids, birthing grad school and dissertations.
Oh,
You can
girl.
only imagine the trauma and the violence and the microaggressions that we face,
Woo!
That's a whole conversation. We need to have a part two
Yeah.
about academia, okay? And being
Mm.
a woman of color and brown body taking space, being pregnant, crazy.
Mhm.
Y me vine para California because my grandmother passed away last year, and she was like a mother to me, and I wanted to be really
Mm.
close to her, and I had my kids, so I relocated. And part of this is too, I wanted to dismantle, I really wanted to challenge academia, the elitism or elitism, I can pronounce it, elitism, elitism. Yeah, so I went through a lot in grad school as a woman of color, as a Mexicana immigrante, being aware of just the lack of representation of students of color in PhD programs, and not having the faculty support of your research, hearing racist jokes by your faculty,
Mhm.
because my research has always been on immigrants. And I still remember, and I still remember a professor, a white male professor, who I said a joke around like, oh, I have X number of undocumented immigrants. He said illegal in my backyard, and everyone, and we're all sociologists, right? And everyone's laughing, and I was like, I'm like the only like
Mhm.
Latina, and then I get these emails from white f- female students are like, oh, I just want to reach out to let you know that I don't align with that. I'm like thinking, why are you emailing me? Why weren't you an upstander in class? And this is like PhD grad work. So having to be like recognized, validated, respected, and then your own research be dismissed and not be taken seriously was hard, until I found who I call like my guardian angel. His name is Michael Young. He's a social movement scholar. He's a white, he's Jewish, and has always been like my advocate, and has guided me really through my graduate program and mentored me, and I kind of feel like crying because it was so hard. Grad
Mhm.
school was hard, like intellectually reading stuff, and you're like, what the fuck does it say? Like, I don't
Mhm.
get this shit.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand these theories that I can't even pronounce some of these words. It's like,
Mhm.
what the felt so dumb, felt so ignorant. And it was
Mhm.
just because we're
Mm.
not in the same playing field, competing with these other grad students, coming from a public school system, going to a state school, and it just realizing like, man, I lack all this mainstream capital that students have. I might have the cultural wealth, right? Capital.
Mhm.
So just navigating all that was hard, and my place, as like I said, deciding to decide that I wanted motherhood in grad school, and how you're not, so you don't do that in grad school. It's like you're a student, and here I am. Like, I feel like I
Mhm.
always
Mhm.
challenged systems of oppression, even with me, without recognizing it. Like, no me di cuenta hasta ahora como adulta, as
Mhm.
an adult, that I realized that. So I just want to share that I had my son was born during my comprehensive exams. I was literally like
Wow.
dripping milk when I was doing my comprehensive exams. Like,
Wow.
imagine the disruption. Like, how feminist and radical is that, right?
Love it.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
I was surviving grad school, but now
Yeah.
I'm like, man, Hortencia, even then you were like being this badass chingona. You're like, I got this. So he was born during
Yeah.
my comprehensive exams. And then my daughter Itzel was born during my dissertation research. Literally, like, ahí la llevaba en mi sling, wherever I would go in the community. And Elena, my third child, was born. She was pregnant when I defended. I was 7 months pregnant when I defended my
She's
dissertation.
so
Can
big.
you
That's
imagine
amazing.
that?
Can you
I,
imagine?
I have to say that like so much of what you're saying is validating. I had professors say all kinds of crazy, weird stuff that at the moment too, like when you're surviving, you're kind of like questioning yourself, like, was that,
Mhm.
I remember clearly there's this book that I opened and it started talking about the id and the something.
The id, the ego, and superego.
I literally opened the book, read the first page, and was like, nope, not doing it. Because I just
Yeah.
couldn't, my
Yeah.
brain was not going to digest. Even if I tried, it was like, so I
Yeah.
showed up to seminar and was just like pretending like I knew what was going on because there's
Yes.
just no way.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
too much. And I then
Mm-hmm.
remember I was pregnant with my first when I did my qualifying exams. And I remember I didn't want to tell anybody until I passed
Yes,
because I
exactly.
was like, oh shit, they're
Mm.
not going to
Mhm,
pass me if they know that
mhm.
I'm pregnant because then they think you're not
Yeah, the stereotype of the Latina who gets pregnant and drops out, right?
right. So I was like, so I remember right
Yeah.
after I passed, I was like, oh, by the way.
I'm pregnant.
And then I didn't I mean,
Mhm,
and then I had two kids, and then I
mhm.
defended. They were still pretty young when I
Aw.
finished. Yeah, my youngest was like 2.
Two. Because we met.
Wow.
So
I mean,
I
I was told not to even go into like if I want a family, you gotta choose,
yeah.
and also unless I have
Exactly.
someone who can pay for everything, I
Mhm.
shouldn't do it either, you know.
Oh
And I was
yeah.
like, I'm
You're
so
discouraged.
actually,
Mhm.
I'm so glad that I didn't listen to
Yeah.
that person, but like the messages are real.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and those messages come even from faculty of color, right? So it's just because I think it's so important to really
100%.
to say
Mhm.
that, right? That even though
Yeah.
sometimes you go to institutions because they look like you, or you think that they understand, but they're surviving and they're perpetuating those systems of oppression
Mhm.
with you as
100%.
well.
I was
So,
in an ethnic studies program. I'm not
mhm.
trying to put anyone on blast, I promise, but I'm just gonna say that.
Not naming names, but
Um,
you know who
so
you are.
you went through all that so much. You were chingona, right? To be able to survive all of that. And I really want to make sure that we get to the topic at hand
Yes.
because you reached
Mm-hmm.
out to us
Mm-hmm.
and you said the
Mm-hmm.
words dismantling diet culture.
Yes.
Like,
And
yeah.
Christine and I were like, yes. And oh, it's so scary because we've done episodes where we've kind of
Yeah.
addressed it, and it's always it's one of those topics
Mhm.
that's really difficult,
It's
partly
hard.
because we're
Mhm.
still unpacking our
Mhm.
own wounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Moving into body positivity,
Yeah.
we're really affirming, and it's like we're healing.
Yes.
And then like once you start to unpack, it's like
Yeah.
more and more shit
Yes.
opens up. You're
Yes.
like, oh my god,
Yes.
everything is tied to
Mm-hmm.
toxic diet culture. And
Yes.
then I think, especially
Mm-hmm.
as we're having kids, and you
Mhm.
know, knowing how hard it was for me to hear certain things from my own mom,
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to perpetuate that, but also like I don't know, it's a hard balance to strike, I think sometimes. So,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
tell us, like, I really want to hear from you, like,
Hmm.
what is dismantling diet culture mean to you?
Yes. What led to this work was the lack, and I think many can relate. We always start something or do something because we don't see ourselves being
We see a need.
represented at the
Mm-hmm.
table or in those conversations. And it was during the pandemic. I've done a lot of work in my community physically, like face to face, and then with the pandemic, there was a shift. And so I was not a social media person at all. Like, I would never post anything, not even on my Facebook. Imagínate, and then going to social media, I was like, okay, I had something to say. So
Yeah.
I created
You
this
have a lot to
account.
say.
And being
Mhm.
as a researcher, I started looking for accounts like of Latinx representation or Chicanas doing this type of work. Y no miraba
Mhm.
puro fitness, all diet stuff. And I was like, okay, something's
Mm-hmm.
going on here. So, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I was like, okay, I need to begin to unpack some of these conversations that are normalized in our communities that are harmful, that they're
Mhm.
so normalized that people think they're normal and that are okay and they're not, and it's
Mhm.
so ingrained. So that's how I sort of began to do this work. And how both of you said, it's true, it's so much, right? When I think about diet culture, I want to say, like, in terms of how I define diet culture, I move away from like I'll be really straight
Mhm.
honest, from the white middle classes gender definition that doesn't really take into systems of oppression into account.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I see myself as, hopefully, one of the few mujeres que está haciendo este trabajo in social media, specifically and intentionally from a social, racial, intersectional lens. And
Mhm.
diet culture for me is a system of oppression. It's systems and structures in our society that are rooted in oppression and white supremacy, that place bodies, certain bodies in a hierarchy, thin, white,
Mhm.
cisgender,
Yep.
normative bodies, and everything that doesn't align in this hierarchy, be BIPOC, LGBTQ, trans, non-binary, people with disabilities, so whatever
Yep.
is not this normativity, right, and
Mm-hmm.
heteronormativity, understanding that, but understanding that diet culture is not something recent. For me as a sociologist, and Dr. Sabrina Strings is a sociologist. She published a book called ay, sale, ya se me olvidó el título del libro, but she talks about the history of fat phobia. And I
Mhm.
argue that the history of fat phobia is rooted in diet culture. We cannot talk about the wellness
Mm.
and diet culture without looking at the history of the formation of this country,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So so see, the lens that I'm bringing in is very different from how other white wellness influencers are talking about diet culture. I'm really rooted in the sociological analysis and looking at how Black folks have been treated throughout history, how Mexican American, and Indigenous people of color, how immigration laws, yeah, this is
Mhm.
all connected to systems of oppression. So if we look at the
Mhm.
founding of this country, how it was founded, de allí viene todo estos sistemas de opresión
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
race. So you're like, how can we talk about the diet culture diets? This is rooted in white supremacy, and white
Mm.
supremacy is part of the foundation of this country.
Yeah,
It's heavy.
when I
It's heavy.
when I was hearing,
Yeah.
I mean, we know this,
I
right?
feel like
Yes.
it goes without saying for us, but I love the
Yeah,
explicitness.
we need
Like
to
we
hear that.
need to
People
hear
need to
it.
hear
They,
that,
people don't know. They just think, oh,
or maybe they know and they don't draw those lines together,
I don't
right?
want to acknowledge it. That's one of the things that
They
I
don't want
find
to
challenging.
acknowledge
That's
it.
why, like, when I reached out to you, is where can I reach out that is safe for me as a woman of color, as a person who is
Mhm.
doing this work that is very difficult to have these courageous conversations, because even within our own communities, people don't see a problem with fat phobic comments, don't
Mm.
understand
mhm,
how white
mhm,
supremacy, like, no lo quieren reconocer o lo
Mhm.
reconocen, pero it's like, oh no, you're just being too critical, or you're gaslighted, all the
Mhm.
time.
mhm,
What makes it
mhm.
very difficult to engage in these conversations.
But they're holding us up to a white standard,
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
mhm,
the way I say it is, diet culture, fat phobia, all those things, right, are a byproduct of colonization.
Yes.
mhm,
And the way I think of it is, and yet our
Mhm.
families, our culture, right,
Mhm.
has
mhm,
internalized those
Mhm.
colonial
mhm,
ways so much, then we
Yes.
become
mhm,
Yes.
the
mhm,
um the vehicles,
Yes.
right,
mhm,
by which
Yes, the
colonization.
vessels to perpetuate
mhm.
that. Exactly.
Per-
And to give an example right now for
Coercions.
people who might
Mhm,
be like thinking, how is colonialism have anything to do with diet culture? Todo. Colorism is an
mhm,
excellent example
mhm,
connected to diet culture.
mhm,
Thin bodies, are people in bigger bodies. La morenita, oh, esa persona está más guapa. This is like, oh, because
Mm.
it's light skin, blue eyes, approximates whiteness, right? That is
mhm,
rooted in colonialism, those wounds, that heteronormativity, I I've been coming out for a couple years. I came out to my sisters. I think the last one was in January 1st, because I thought I wasn't gonna make it. I thought I was not gonna live. Like, that's how bad it
Mm.
has been. And we talk about colonialism, and we talk about systems of oppression, and how we have been conditioned to suppress our sexuality.
mm,
Mhm.
mm,
And for me, that's why I'm so passionate about this work, because I have been affected by diet culture in so many ways. So if I can allow myself to be vulnerable, to share my story, and to, as a person, as a human being, but also
mhm,
as an intellectual, as an academic, and a health coach, like, how powerful is that, right? When we're able to bring not only our lived experience, but connect it to this, like, academic language, and which you shouldn't be in the first place. Like, we should just be validated for our lived experience,
Right.
like, we don't need
Yeah.
to have that formal background education, but pues it's a
Yeah.
perk, ¿verdad? It's an asset.
Yeah, and I'm
We're right there with you. Totally.
yeah, and it's again, there's so much to unpack, and I think because I was talking, I do a lecture about like body politics for my class,
Mhm,
in my
mhm,
like intro to women's studies class. And it's I teach at Cal State LA, so it's predominantly Latinas, Chicanas, and so
mhm,
we're talking about it from that cultural perspective,
Yeah.
and
mhm,
again thinking about how this is no longer like, it's not that it's not coming from white culture, because it absolutely is, holding the white standard of beauty, but a lot of it is just, it's coming from within our own family,
Yes.
the way our
Yes.
own family. I mean,
Mhm.
I have this clear, my mom. Anyway, like
Both of our moms were hairdressers.
both
I'm
our
just
moms,
gonna say,
yeah,
or the beauty culture,
was
like,
huge.
they succeeded in that world.
Totally.
Mhm.
And then, but I mean, I've been able to pay more attention, like realizing where it came from. And then I start paying attention to how prevalent it is in my family, and
Mhm.
seeing the subtle ways
Yes.
that, just even like
Mhm.
policing what people eat, or
Yes.
this
What they
idea
wear.
of like healthy food is
Mhm.
bland, right? That
Mhm.
you're not going to use too much sauce, or you're not going to use too much spice, like all this stuff. And
Garlic, onion,
yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm like,
all the good
wait
things.
a minute.
Exactly. Horrible
Wait,
culture ingredients.
or even the demonizing of like cultural
Mhm.
food, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
seeing Mexican food as like junk food, and we were just having this discussion, right? Because
Yeah.
um or I'm thinking about tamales, and how they're made, how the masa is often made with lard,
Sí.
and lard and fat are demonized, right, as like
Mhm. Mhm.
bad, and yet that's
Mhm.
where all the flavor comes from, and that's what
Yes.
makes tamales so good. And
Unless it's white culture food, right? Because there's that diet, right? The keto diet, like it's all fat,
Mhm.
right? But it's like
but it's good
Exactly.
fat. They still label
Exactly.
it's
good
purity
fat.
Mhm.
culture, right?
It's purity
Culture
culture.
Yes.
in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it just
Correct.
makes me sad that
Mhm.
it makes me sad to know that a lot of my wounds around diet culture came from within my own family. My mom was always
Uh-huh.
like, well, if you lose a few pounds,
Mhm.
we've come a long way. It's been a good 20 years since she said that to me, but it was only because I put my foot down and said, you're no longer allowed to make comments about my
Yes.
weight. You're no longer allowed to. But she
Mhm.
would like buy me clothes that were a little smaller
Mm.
than they were supposed to be.
It's like families trying to protect girls from rape culture,
Yeah.
but by policing them, But, so this is.
And then one of my students brought up the prevalence of like Latinx folks in like things like Herbalife,
Oh,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
or yeah,
Yeah.
like those
Mhm.
kinds of things. And I was
Mhm. The
like,
products.
shit, man, that's how like
Sí. So
insidious
great. Yes.
colonization is, right? Now
Yes.
it's made its way and planted its roots in our community, and it's
Mm.
become almost the way our community has survives now.
Mm.
Yes. And that's, I think that when we talk about how do we like for me and that's the name of my podcast, Dismantling Diet Culture, and that's kind of what I have also on my bio on my Instagram is
Mhm.
part of dismantling diet culture begins with us, right? So, like practical, concrete things. What can we offer our audiences?
Mm.
Challenging those internalized ideas and belief systems. I mean, listening to your podcast, it's just amazing. You're talking about these topics that we normally don't talk about in our own families. Sexuality, oppression, all this different stuff. So, dismantling is like beginning to reframe and rethink how we think about food, how we think
Mhm.
about bodies, how we think about love, about basically everything, right? Because
Everything, yeah.
because the family is an institution and it connects with religion. They're best friends. Religion, the institution of religion and family, pues son
Just
comadres. They
love it.
reinforce each other, right? And like you
Yeah.
said, it's not from one day to another. I'm in my 40s and I'm still dismantling
Mhm.
and unpacking because we get triggered, right? Things happen and that
Mhm.
we're re-triggered about food or about body or some traumas that we need to continue to heal. For me, healing is like never ending. It's not like step one and I'm done in step two or three. It's just like
Yeah.
non-linear and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's messy and ugly, all of it.
Yeah.
Can I take us into the conversation about our children?
I was
Yes.
like, "Ooh." Okay, go.
Well, I just, already we have 7-year-olds. You have an almost 8-year-old. It's like,
I'm almost 8-year-old and a 10-year-old.
yeah. And so it's come up for in our kids in the way, how Laura came home one time and he's like, I don't want to, be fat, yeah, the other day, right? He came and he's like, I'm the chunkiest one in our class. I was like, let's talk about this, Poppy. Like,
Same.
what's, how
Mhm.
I mean, I need help actually.
Well,
This
I
is
think it tells us a few things when the kids come home with this language. because I think there's a perception of like, oh, we're women's studies, ethnic studies professors, like our kids are gonna be down with some shit, and we can only
No.
control
Yes.
Yeah.
What
what
happens in
happens
the
in
house?
our own home.
That's right.
We
Mm-hmm.
can't control how they go
Mm-hmm.
out in the world and what they're hearing from sometimes
Yes.
even family members,
That's
right? Like,
right.
Yes.
and it's not a battle we
Yes.
need to fight because we don't need to control that. What we need to do then is
Repair.
say,
We
how
need
do
some.
we,
Yeah.
how do we that when they come to us and
Exactly.
say no, like, or yeah, what do we say?
Exactly. That's as parents, right? As parents, we already know what we don't want to perpetuate, or what we don't want to
Mhm.
create more harm to our children. We want to end those cycles of intergenerational violence and trauma, and diet culture with our own kids. So we want to protect them as much, or and make them feel. From personal experience, I did my best to always allow my kids to express themselves through their clothes in whatever shape and form. I never policed
Mm.
their bodies. I always allowed them. So when my kids were small, we would go to family gatherings. Eran los que estaban como despeinados. Like they were never
Oh,
neat and clean. And I always felt like people would judge us like, oh, it's the parents. No, I am allowing my kid to self-express. So, just, but
And
it's hard when
it
family,
is it
so
is
hard.
so hard. Both my
Yes.
kids really insist on having long hair, right?
Yeah.
My oldest in particular, his hair texture is very different, and so
Mhm.
he wakes up and looks like a lion. Like it's just this mane, which everybody loves. It's a little bit hard because I'm trying to teach him how to take care of his own hair,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
difficult. And so it's a constant source of conflict in our house because I
Mhm.
keep saying, if you're gonna have long hair, it's a responsibility. You need to take care of,
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
10 years old, you need to
I
learn.
should,
And my
mhm.
husband just wants to be like, cut it off. Like cut it
Mhm.
off.
Like, not
Mhm.
deal
And
with
so
it.
and a lot of people in our life are like, oh my God, their hair's so long. Like, and I'm like,
Mhm.
and I have to come back to
Mhm.
their bodily autonomy. Like
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanna honor
Mhm.
that this is
Yes.
it, and it's not it's something silly to say you can't do that, right? Like
Mhm.
I tell my
Mhm.
husband, we gotta fight our battles. There's a lot of other things we need to,
Yes.
have
Yes.
harsh boundaries with. This is not one of them,
Mhm.
and he
Yeah.
should be allowed to express himself in the way he wants, especially because for
Exactly.
him it's he will even
Mhm.
say, like, if we even get him a trim, like a tiny little, he'll
Oh.
say, no one's gonna recognize me.
Oh, ¿ves cómo está conectado con su identidad? Where it's just,
Totally. He, like, looks at
yes.
himself in the mirror
Mhm.
and loves when his hair is just a mess, and the same thing when and to go
I
to
do too.
and he when to go to family parties, we try to get them to, like, "Let's wear something a little nicer." Oh,
Yes.
no. My
Same
oldest is
here.
like, "That's not comfortable, and I
Yeah.
should be comfortable.
Mhm.
I sh"
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
god.
Well, I think it's
Exactly.
kind of exacerbated because of
Mhm.
COVID too. They've had this
Mhm.
time where we had this
Yeah,
Mhm.
we didn't
unsettling
have to
time.
look
We didn't have to look.
decent.
We didn't go to any family things, and then suddenly you're there, and it's just like, oh, we need.
Sí.
What do we
Yeah,
need to do right now?
Yeah. And so
and
it's I think we're trying to
mhm,
support it, like you said,
mhm,
but
mhm.
it's so hard because we're battling our
Yes.
own, like, "Oh my
Mhm.
Yes,
god, family's gonna judge," and, "What are
exactly.
people gonna say?" And yeah.
Yeah, but I think that gives our kids so much agency and so much power, and we're modeling that for them so that they
Yeah.
can continue to do that because they're going to be faced in the world and in school with all this societal pressure. And going back to what you said, it's so true. We can only protect them, and we can only make them feel loved in the size that they're in, and like the body diversity and everything. And then I feel like I've done all that work too, right? I think like here we are as people who've gone through formal education, we have PhDs, we have these real struggles, right? We can't, like, what happens in school, what they hear, what they say, and they come back home, it
Mhm.
hurts us
Mm.
because that's what we want to protect them from.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there's no answer for that. I don't There's no solution. The solution is to continue to be consistent with the messages that we give our
Mhm.
kids about
Mhm.
body positivity, not to get caught up with the body positivity either narrative, right? But I always tell my kids about body diversity. I always remind them, you're indigenous, like we lost the language because of colonialism, but your
Mm.
abuelita, like, always, like, and I am indigenous. I tell my kids, like I tell my daughters, don't forget that you're fire, like don't forget, like, see mama, we know we talk about race, mama. Guess what my son just told me recently? Mama, I'm educated too.
Mhm.
My sophomore year. high school kid. I was like, que la cosa, mijo. Like, so my kids know it all, right? So I was like, but here I am. Even though they're like, they want to silence me because that's what they're doing by saying, I know, mama, like, I already know.
Yeah.
They're trying to silence me, and I just keep going. And believe me, I cry. I cry when my kids don't want to listen to me, or when I feel like a broken record, because they're not going to hear it anywhere else.
Yeah. That's the ultimate reminder, right? Because I do think when the kids come home, we want to, like, what's the thing we can say, and then that's it, right?
Yeah.
But what you said is, it's not
True.
about the
Because
one
they're
time that you
teenagers.
say it. It's the consistency.
Yeah.
It's the, like,
Yes.
so it doesn't have to be a
Consistency.
long, it can just be like,
Yeah.
chunky is good. Chunky's just a word.
Yes, right, and
Totally.
then modeling that, because I live in a thin body,
Yeah.
right? And I have thin privilege, and how do I dismantle my thin privilege? And I like,
Mm.
because my kids, their body type is more like my husband, so I remind them, like, that bodies are diverse, that health does not equal the size or the number on the scale. Pero vivimos en una sociedad racista. Like, we live in a racist society. We live where there's all these isms too. So it's like, you can eat healthy and be in a bigger body and be a brown person and still experience discrimination and some type of disenfranchisement. So it's like, health is eating healthy is not going to solve our societal problems of fat phobia. It's not going to solve racism, homophobia, transphobia, right? So they're
Yeah.
all you know what I mean, they're all intersectional issues
Yeah.
that I think that the wellness industry is sometimes forgets, like,
This is our children's book.
mm-hmm.
Healthy bodies can be all sizes, like,
yeah. I mean,
and to trust this is another point I want to make too, sorry, is we, growing up, right, we grow up in a Mexican American Chicano home, and our plates are served, nos dan la comida, and we need to finish our food. There's a lot of food traumas. I think we need another podcast episode. There's so many food traumas in our homes. So I didn't grow up trusting my body, because they told me what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat it, and so another thing that parents can do, anyone who's listening, is trust your kids.
yeah.
Trust your kids, trust their bodies.
That's
And
that's
when
a
they're hungry, and
that's
it's
a
okay
big
if
one
they don't
in our
Mhm.
house.
Yeah.
That's a big one in our house. Because my husband will tend to try to say, like, oh, you need to eat so much, and it's hard because he's maybe not 100% on board with my, like, anti-diet culture stuff, but
Mhm.
I'm still, and so I kind of am okay when him and I are in conflict in front of them
Mhm.
in those
Mhm.
situations
Yes,
where
I can see
he'll
that.
say, like, oh, you need to finish that before whatever, and I'm kind of like, are you full? And
Mhm.
he'll say yes. Okay, that's fine then if you're full, right? So then
Mhm.
he hears, like, somebody wants me to eat more than I want to, but
Mhm.
I am
Mhm.
full, and so
he's like, now can I have candy? And I was like,
that's the hard one. That's the hard one.
Your body needs this healthy growing food first, like, we need to,
Yeah.
like, give you the things that will help your body grow,
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, I think it's the why. Like, why are we eating certain
Mhm.
things? And I
Mhm.
will say, and we got to wrap up, I know. But
Oh yeah.
I really try to, my oldest, my two kids, both boys, but very different body types, like completely polar opposites. And so really trying to lean into, and the different eating habits, right? My oldest will eat a big meal and be good for hours. My little just wants to snack all day long, right? So, and really, really skinny. And my oldest is, this big
Mhm.
kid. And,
Mhm.
and so I was always, and I'm a little concerned sometimes. Does he eat too much? Is is he
Yeah.
eating enough? Blah, blah, blah. And then he recently went camping for 4 days without me, right, with his class. And and I'm like, okay, you have to just make sure you eat something, whatever they have. Like, don't be picky because you need the energy. And he comes back and he's like, I knew you would want me to eat something good for me. So I ate salad with every meal. And I was
Aw.
like, it was, I like, it was, to me, it was like,
He listened to what you
I don't know, it just felt like it was a source of pride for me. Like, oh,
Yeah.
he he didn't do. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't like, oh, mom's not here now, so I'm just gonna do whatever I want. It was kind of like
you're his consciousness. He's so they know. It's like I feel like we need to continue to be like a broken record, and because
thank you for that.
We gotta trust. We gotta trust
Be a
our
broken
kids in
record.
making those decisions. I mean, well, how else can we say it, right? That hopefully everything we've shared with them, that they will take it and make those decisions, or if not, at least it's here in their consciousness. Like, okay, this is what my
It's in their subconscious. That's what I say. It's there because I know that's how I was. My mom would tell me things, and I'd be like, whatever, and then later on, I'd be like, well, you know, I'd pull up that that thing that I heard a million times, and I may not have ever admitted to her that it was that, but okay, so we do want to wrap up because we want to honor everyone's time, but tell us where we can find you, how people can hear more about your work, anything else you want to share.
Yes. So I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Same account name, Dr. Hortencia Jimenez. That's where I'm at. I also recently launched about a month ago my podcast, Dismantling Diet Culture, Fuck Being Calladita. And that you can check it out. Is I would, like I said, lack of representation, and I wanted to have a bilingual, or just be unapologetic to navigate the language, in English and Spanish, and create a safe space for BIPOC and queer folks on diet culture. And I'll give you my email so you can link it. People who want to reach out, I'm here. I really care about this industry and dismantling it, in at the micro level through our actions and what we can do at home, and eventually system change.
I love your fierceness, Mama. I love it. I'm so grateful that we got this chance to talk with you.
Gracias.
Thank you so much. We love it.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much.
Intro and outro song is called Foreign Fog by The Corner House, a band that features our dear friend Danelia Arechiga. Vengo a trabajar.